Hello everyone, my name is Gatanjulirao. I'm 15 years old and I'm a sophomore in high school and I am an innovator, author, and promoter of STEM. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say a huge happy International Women's Day to everyone watching out there. So, getting involved in science and technology, especially for girls, can seem like a hard task. But as long as you have that inner drive and motivation, then you're able to solve the world's problems. So go out there and solve problems that you see in society and make a positive change in the world because there is nobody stopping you but yourself. Our generation is growing up in this place where we're seeing problems that have never existed before. And now innovation is not an option, it's a necessity. And each and every one of us have to do our part. So we need all of you watching out there who are even thinking about solving a problem. Go do it because you have the power to change the world. It was great meeting all of you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Haley Sweetland Edwards, an editor at Time, and I'm joined by Dr. Jane Goodall, the founder of the Jane Goodall Institute. It's an absolute joy to have you here, Jane. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Let's start with that video from Gatanjulirao. You and Gatanjali are really on the same page. You travel around the world, both physically and virtually, to share a similar message of grit, determination, and optimism. What is it you hope to convey to the young people around the world?
Well, it depends on the young person. It depends on the country they're in. It depends on the problems that are facing them. So the priority is going to be different. It's not just one suits all, except to remind all of them that every single day they live on this planet, they make some kind of difference, and they can choose what kind of difference, tell their parents what to buy. I'm not going to eat meat. I'm not going to eat products with palm oil in them. I'm not going to eat cheap products because they were probably made by child slave labor, that kind of thing.
So I remember you saying at some point, I think on a Time video, whether it's cleaning up a schoolyard or volunteering at a local animal shelter, or it's really about what ignites the passion in each person.
Yes, I think that's why our Jane Goodall Institute Roots and Shoots program is growing so fast and so rapidly around the world, because we don't dictate what the young people do. It's do a project. It's done organized in groups. So get together with your group and choose 3 projects, one to help animals, one to help people, one to help the environment, and then work out what you can do and roll up your sleeves and get out there and take action. And so the young people are always working on something they are passionate about and sharing what they're doing. And it's now kindergarten, university, everything in between, and even some adult groups now. So it's changing lives. They write and tell me.
Wow. What are some of your kindergartners doing?
Oh, they love doing organic gardens. They especially love, and even the preschoolers, they love vermiculture. In the days when I could travel before the pandemic, I used to go and look at the vegetable garden, and a kid would open up this lid and take out a handful of nasty bits of school food with little pink worms and dump it in my hand. I have to go, oh, they're lovely, beautiful worms. They're helping the garden.
What about the college age?
College age, well, you think of the different problems in the world, you'll find a group of college kids tackling that problem, whether it's plastic, palm oil, especially these days we're trying to do something about the trafficking of wildlife, because that is one of the main reasons for the initiation of this pandemic. It's our total disrespect of animals and the natural world.
One of the take-homes from this last year has been that these large global crises have different effects in different communities and on different types of people. Certainly on women, certainly on marginalized communities, and depending on what country you're in. How does that sort of recognition inform your work?
Well, I think it's pointed out very clearly the difference between the haves and the have-nots. And so often in so many countries, the have-nots are underserved. They can't get the vaccines and things like that. But, the real takeaway from this past year, this terrible pandemic that's caused so much suffering, is that we simply must develop a new relationship with animals and the natural world, because as we destroy environments, we crowd animals closer to each other. That's one way a new disease can start. We crowd some animals closer to people, and again, a bacteria or a virus spilling over from one animal to one person can create a new disease. The COVID-19 is thought to have originated from a wildlife market in China. And unfortunately for us, it was very infectious, very contagious, and it's led to suffering all over the world. And as you say, in some of the poorer communities, it's hit the worst. And that's including in countries like the United States and the UK.
It's almost like how do you address something that requires so much global cooperation? How do we even begin? Has this last year been enough to sort of galvanize us to cooperate?
I would hope that enough people have woken up to the fact that we need change. Certainly some governments have understood, and not only change in our relationship to the natural world, of which we are part and upon which we depend. So we go on destroying the natural world. We pay the price. We're paying the price now because we didn't heed the people studying these zoonotic diseases. We just carried on with business as usual. And I hope we've realized that the natural resources of this planet are finite. And we can't go on the assumption that there can be unlimited economic development on a planet with finite resources. And so I hope this past year has helped us understand, we've got to make this new relationship and a new, greener and more sustainable economy. And, there's one other thing which I really want people to zoom in on, that we talk about wildlife markets, we talk about loss of biodiversity, we talk about the sixth great extinction, and we talk about species. But in these wildlife markets where animals are crowded together in horribly cruel conditions, and in our factory farms, the intensive animal agriculture, these animals are individuals. They have their own personality. They have their own life. They can experience fear, terror, pain. And so we need to think what we're doing and think about it from a different perspective. It's not just a species.
You've spoken a lot about this need for, or rather this disconnect between the human mind and the human heart, a need to sort of rekindle this love and compassion for animals and for each other. What does that look like for us?
Well, what it looks like is being less selfish, understanding animals for who they are, and each one of us doing our part. And people feel helpless because, as you just mentioned, the problems are huge. And that's why, in order to ground yourself, and so many people have lost hope, it's no good thinking globally, like you're suggesting. Of course, we have to act globally. But first of all, make sure that you act locally and see that you make a difference. Then know that all around the world, there are people making a difference, just like you and your group. And then you dare to think globally. And everywhere, young people are rising. They literally are all over. They're rising to these new challenges and beginning to take action, not just marching and demanding, but actually leading, showing by example, working very, very hard. And some young people are working really, really hard to make a difference. And so the question really is, how do we get to some of the despotic political rulers where the public really can't make any impact as we can if we're fortunate enough to be in a democracy?
When you talk about these young people who are working so hard to make a difference, is there someone or a project that comes to mind?
Oh gosh, there's so many projects. We're taking part in the Trillion Tree Challenge, our Roots and Shoots kids are not only planting the trees, anybody can plant a tree. The main thing is to plant the right tree in the right soil at the right time of year and look after it, make sure that it's growing. So we're trying to protect rainforests, which is the most important thing of all, because they're these old growth forests, they have the rich biodiversity, and we depend for our existence on healthy ecosystems, which depend on the diversity of species that make them up. Protect the rainforests, and that's not easy. In some countries like Brazil, it's jolly difficult, but we've got to restore rainforests, areas which have been deforested. But it's also important to plant trees in urban areas. And you know what's fascinating but horrifying? If you go through a big city, say in the US or the UK, you go through where the affluent people live. There's tree-lined streets and you can see birds up there and you can look at a sunset. Then come to a poorer area, suddenly it's all concrete and gray. And you know, when you green an area where there's high crime, the crime level drops, mental illness drops, people are healthier. We actually need this green world that we're destroying so fast. Greening an urban area also is helping to reduce the heating up of the planet. It becomes cooler. The roots of the trees stabilize the soil, the leaves help to clean the air. So that is something that many, many of our groups are doing and working extremely hard when they do it.
I want to pivot quickly to International Women's Day. In an op-ed for Time a few years ago, you wrote about the need to empower sort of traditionally female characteristics that you had observed among chimpanzees and just generally in the wild. And I was wondering if acting more like women traditionally to get ahead, what does that look like? And how do you speak about that to your female students, particularly
Well, I usually start off by talking about one of the South American tribes, and I don't remember even which country it was in, but it was one of the chiefs. And he said to me, Jane, we see our tribe as like an eagle, and one wing is male and the other wing is female, and only when the two wings are equal can our tribe fly high. So I think, you know, since I began, the inclusion of women in more and more different aspects of society, in science, everywhere, has increased. There's still a lot of discrimination, there's no question about that, in some countries more than others. But one sad trend that I observed, certainly here in the UK, was that in politics, the women and business, the women who tended to be successful were the ones who showed so many male characteristics. And this is sad because we need this balance. We need the attributes that do characterize females. The reason that we have those attributes is because during evolution, the role of the female was to be a good mother. And you can't be a good mother if you're impatient. You need to be able to understand and empathize with others to be a good mother. And so, you know, that's kind of somehow built into our genes. And males tend to get too aggressive. So we need a balance. We need both sides. And of course, every woman has male in her, every male has woman in him. And we've just got to get it right.
Empathy and patience, and another word that you use sometimes is humility. And I think you used it on this call, this need to stop thinking that we can dominate and destroy nature and still be okay. How do you convey that message? And what's something that, again, on sort of a local or a personal level, how do we take that home and internalize that?
Well, I think I don't really know, because I tend to work by interacting with individuals, and individuals react very differently. But, you know, one important way of getting change is not to be confrontational, but to try and reach the heart. That to me is absolutely key in creating change. And I do that with stories. And I've lived long enough to have stories that match almost everything. And try to find out also a little bit about the person that you're going to be meeting with. What is anything you have in common? Love of dogs, a love of nature, something, so that you just have that tiny little bit that you can cling on to. And then my mother taught me, listen. So you listen to them, because she said, maybe they've got ideas that you never thought of. Maybe it'll help you. Maybe you'll change a bit. Maybe you'll both change a bit. Maybe it'll be a compromise.
That is an inspirational and perfect way to end this conversation. Should all take a little less credit, be a little bit more humble, and listen more.
And remember that every day you live, you make a difference, and you can choose what sort of difference you make. And so we have to alleviate poverty, because if you're really poor, you can't have the luxury of making those decisions, those ethical decisions about what you buy. So sorry, but I had to say that, because alleviating poverty is tremendously important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Jane Goodall, thank you so much. An absolute pleasure speaking with you. And thank you for all the good work you do.
Well, thank you, and lovely speaking to you. And I hope we manage to do it again.
Me too.
Bye.
Bye.